this was a couple of nights ago, well, really a week ago now, but Tyrese Halliburton, bro, I mean, like, that's a brick out moment. I know it was like a crazy shot and all, like, and everyone's like, oh my god, look at that, all this. Well, YouTube, don't ban me for that. But imagine if they lost the game in OT after he did that. That would have been crazy. I mean, that's like a J.R. Smith type of moment. Anyway, though, yeah, roster raids are back, and yeah, let's get the worst team in the league. And with that, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Fun Evolve. Of course, please like and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed the first edition of the 2025 NFL roster grades. As we go through every single NFL team, and I pick apart their roster and grade it from an F to an A scale, which we'll get to in a minute, and then everything. Nothing really different in terms of our overall, again, grading system, which, again, we changed for the draft a little bit, but not for the rosters. Again, this all accumulates in the team's resume, and that basically is a guideline to go off of when I do my predictions right before the start of the season, which, again, will start September 4th, so we're almost 3 months away, something like that. It's going to be a while, but, again, we want to get these started, so, we'll have everything done because there's definitely a lot of teams in the NFL to say the least. Anyway, though, again, like I said, first things first, and then the first team we're going through the Titans, who had the worst record in the league last year at 3-14, technically, I guess. But yeah, here's the roster. We'll go through most of the positions. Nothing like it's not going to be like super broken up, but I guess some parts, like defensively, we'll go through a couple things, and offensively. Anyway, but before we get into these quarterbacks, let's talk about the grading system. All right, so again, if you watched the series last year, it's basically the same thing, so I guess you can skip that if you want to. But looking at this, all right, the total number of points that you can accumulate as a roster is 468. This means your roster is literally perfect. Is it possible to get this? Absolutely not. I mean, I guess you get over 468 if you, I don't know, have a really good position. But basically, this, I give points, so again, depending on every single position has a different set of value, and each grade I give them. So again, think of this starting at like an F. So the Titans start at 0 points. Let's say that. Let's say I give their quarterback, we'll get to it in a second, but a B plus. This means that quarterback, we'll get to it, but each position is worth a certain number of points every single time they get a higher grade. So if I said the Titans had a D plus a D minus quarterback. Like, that's, like, what I think their situation's at. That would mean, let's say, I don't know, let's say the value for each, again, grade tick is, like, 2 points. So that means they get 2 points for quarterback, which is not what you want at all. So, again, quarterback's obviously more valuable than that. That's just kind of an example for that. So you add up all those different categories, which we'll get to in a minute, and that'll get you your whole entire grade. And then these are the basic ranks to go at them. Again, it's definitely fluid, so you'll definitely see some things here. I say an A plus is over 400 points. That never happens. There's never, very rarely, I think maybe one time I've had a roster that was close to an A plus. It didn't happen. Don't expect any roster to be close here. I'm very lenient here with this. If the roster is close to this, or I think there's a good reason for them to be in this range, they'll be here. Again, 360 is a very hard bar to hit. A minus is, I think, Oregon the best rosters in this in terms of the points set. Again, I can obviously change that. Again, the actual grade is not subjective to these points. It's just a good guideline for you guys. Most teams set at 290 to 310. This is again really solid B. It's more like a B plus though, or even an A minus to be honest with you. 311 to 330 is again also very, very, very good. That's B plus. B minus, again, these are kind of average teams, the decent teams. It's still not a bad place to be. Again, you want to be at, again, 290 I think is the really good number to be at. 235 to 260, yeah, not great. Again, like I said, it's very fluid. These aren't the really points. This even isn't terrible. 220 is not good. That's in these really, definitely not great rosters. And it's very rare to see any roster below a D plus, even I'd say, in terms of the points wise. But 180 to 200 is just not good. C minus, again, 202 to 28. These are again cumulative. And then again, D is 170 to 180. Again, that's a very narrow range. I understand that, but again, I don't really care. Again, if they're a D, they're probably a D minus, which is here. And then I get an F. It is very hard to get an F. I don't think you're ever going to get an F because even the worst teams I've ever seen, again, maybe the Browns in 2017, the preseason, their roster might have been this bad. But that's really bad. That's flat out D's every single position. And then again, we look at by what is it called? Position. Again, there's special teams and stuff, so again, it doesn't add up to that 468. But if you have a perfect offense, you can get a 180, I guess. But A+ is over 160. I'm usually pretty lenient about that. Chiefs do get an exception for being an A. They're usually not this good, but yeah, I'll probably give them an A anyway. That was released last year. That's why I had to put that in there. 140 and 149, that's an A- overall offense. 125 points to 139 is a B+, and then you can kind of get through the rest again. You got to get under 60 to be an F. And then under 50 for an F on defense, because defense is less points, just for because again, there's less positions and less. It's not that's less important, but in some ways it kind of is. Anyway, though, that is all I got for the actual great range for the things. Again, it's very fluid. You got to understand that. If I have a team that's 300, I don't know, points. They could be an A-, and they're just not that good. But again, if I think they're there, they're going to be there. So again, it's definitely subjective in that way too. But again, I like to somewhat use it as a guideline again over the true accountability of that roster. Anyway, though, why does that say 2024? That should say 2025. There we go. All right. These are the ranges for each position. I guess we'll get into this right now, and then again we'll get to the quarterback in a second. But the overall roster grade is here. You can see this. Here it is. If it's a D-, whatever, let us say 5 points per grade, that's the standard value for each position. That's what you're gonna get if you get a D-. Again, F, you get nothing. F, 0 points. Yeah, the position is literally not gonna help you out at all, and I'm not gonna be negatives, but again, it basically is a negative. D, again, this is very small, but D is 2 times the standard value, and it keeps going up all the way up to an A+, and then anything else subjective I can put it. But again, quarterback is worth the most at 5 points, as well as identity, because every NFL team that's won a Super Bowl has had an identity. You cannot tell me otherwise. Running back, that is worth 3 points. Wide receivers, 3 points. Again, that's you could argue otherwise, but I think that's pretty fair. Tight ends, 2 points. Offensive line is 2 points. Also, again, you could argue otherwise. Linebackers, 3 points. Again, defensive line is 2. That's a little bit tough, but we'll get into that. Again, there's a reason we do the front 7 there. Pass rush is 4 points. Pass rush is the most important part of defense. You can't argue with the wall on that one. Secondary is overall worth 5 points, but cornerbacks give 2 points. Safeties are 3, because safeties, I think, in this day and age, are a little more valuable. Defensive overall value and then offensive overall value, we'll talk about that when we get to the end of this, again, in the secondary segments and the offensive line segments. And then we will have this little section where we'll talk about the special teams, again, give them a point, because special teams are important, even though many people will say otherwise. The depth. This is just the overall depth of the roster, so I'll kind of just skim through, what do I think this team's depth is looking like, again, position-wise. And then we got identity, because like I said, it's still really important. Then again, after all that, we'll reveal the overall roster grade in terms of points, and then where I think they're sitting at. With that said, though, again, it's kind of the first one, so it's going to be a little bit more slow. After that explanation, let's get into the Titans quarterback situation. And if you did not watch the Titans offseason, I don't even know, short form video, it's something like that. Yes, Cam Ward was somewhat discussed in that, but he was the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. The only quarterback, in my opinion, that I think was worth maybe a top 20 pick. I think he was number 11 on my big board, if I'm not mistaken. But like I said, number 1, pick 1, best quarterback in college football last year out of Miami. His anticipation is generational. Again, you can go watch the prospect evaluation, the 2025 NFL draft quarterback rankings. He was my number 1 guy, obviously, and Cam Ward, very good in anticipation. But how does he fit in this offense? That's the biggest question. Again, looking at it overall, again, we'll get into it when we actually get these other positions. But I would say it's definitely a lackluster supporting cast, to say the least. But Cam as a rookie, I do not think he will have the most successful season at all. Not because I think he's bad, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem like an offense will really succeed too well. And again, he wasn't in the elite Miami offense last year, but it was still a very good group. Again, very solid offensive line. And also considering the fact that, he's in the NFL now and he can't hold on the ball forever and he's going to get sacked a boatload, it just doesn't really look too good for him. Will Levis is their backup. He was their starting quarterback for most of last year. He was terrible. He had some good games, I guess. But yeah, again, all the memes kind of tell you that. Again, I think that was definitely a little bit overblown. But Will Levis is not a good NFL quarterback, guys. 13 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. I don't even know what he had, an atrocious record. And again, you saw those plays. There's some just on film. Yes, he has an NFL caliber on. That's absolutely for sure. But the fact that, again, he can't really read defenses too well, and he's got inexcusable turnovers in him. That just can't happen. Yeah, that's why he's here. I would not be surprised if he gets traded at some point though. Who knows? But yeah, Will Levis again for a backup quarterback isn't the worst. Brandon Allen, he's been a journeyman for a while. He really has never gotten a clear, extended role as a starter outside of 2020, where he had a pretty interesting stint. Again, I guess we'll kind of just career summary of Brandon Allen. 2019, I think he started 3 games. Yeah, those 3 games. He wasn't terrible. I mean, the completion percentage would say otherwise, but I didn't really see him as like a bad quarterback that year. 2020 really is only extended time as a starter. I think only like 1-4, so not very good. But in terms of production, he actually wasn't too bad. 2021, he started like 1 game. 2022, he didn't play that much, and then he didn't play in 2023. I think he's Niners backup. Last year, you might remember him against the Packers losing like, what was it, 38-10 or something, and I think he played Week 18 or something like that. I don't really remember. He's a journeyman backup. He's not going to do much for you then. Anyway, though, if we exclude that last guy, this Titans quarterback room is interesting because, you got Will Levis, who, again, is just not great. But, again, his backup, you should be pretty okay with that. And then you obviously have Cam Ward as a starter. So, I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm probably going to give them a C at quarterback because Cam's going to be a rookie, obviously. And I just don't see this offense, again, with Cam at quarterback, really just being efficient all the time. I really like Cam, but as a rookie, I just don't think he'll be super successful. That's just kind of how it is. Rookie quarterbacks, unless you're getting a guy like Trevor Lawrence, and even then, especially in this offense, I just am not feeling great about this quarterback situation. Yes, Cam, great for the future, but right now, as a rookie, do I expect him to be anything better than average? Absolutely not. And again, it's going to be kind of the highs and lows. I think he'll be better than Caleb Williams was, but I don't expect him to be playing like this. Again, it's really just the highs and lows that kind of range it to a C. It's not going to be like, I think he'll be a little more consistent than Caleb Williams, but still not very good and productive. So what is that, 25 points? If I'm not mistaken, if we're going to be using this multiplier. Yeah, that's the math, right? Anyway, though, that's all I got for the quarterback position for the Titans. Now on to the skill positions for the Titans. They have a very interesting group here. Again, we'll go through running backs, tight end, wide receivers, and tight ends, again, in this order. Anyway, though, I guess we'll start with running back. Tony Pollard, I think, is a solid NFL running back. He is not going to be a guy as the number 1 guy, running back that you're going to be, like, super thrilled. He has had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons, though, and last year, I think, was overall his most consistent. Yes, he is not a guy who's going to just break up 40 big runs a game. But he's still going to be very productive overall, and especially in this offense that just wasn't very good. He definitely did a decent job. As a receiver, he's somewhat productive, and he is versatile. Solid pass protector. Not great, but definitely solid. I still don't think he was as good as he was in 2022, but again, that's on 192 carries versus 260. Back-to-back seasons with more carries, but I think he definitely had a better year overall. He's definitely a pretty solid back. Again, a lot of teams would be happy to have him, but again, he's nothing special. Tyjae Spears is a backup. Very disappointing season last year, in my opinion. He just wasn't very good. There's kind of no way around it. As a rookie, he had a very he showed a lot of flashes, but last year not only did he battle some injuries and also just straight up inconsistencies, but he just flat out didn't look very good. As a receiver, wasn't nearly as dynamic either. Yeah, again, I think that was partly the quarterback situation. The fact that again he didn't have an offensive line to run it against, but again you can say the same thing for Tony Pollard. Tyjae Spears is the backup. Very disappointing 2024 season to say the least. Julius Chestnut is a special teamer. He's okay though. Kyle Mullings is definitely interesting, but again, there's a reason I didn't talk about him really at all. In the prospect rankings. He just isn't really that dynamic. He is not as good as Donovan Edwards was. You could argue, again, people think otherwise. I think I don't even know if he was worth getting picked, but he does have some decent traits. Again, as a guy who's a little more instinctive than some of those other backs. So again, I guess that's good. But overall, for this running back position, I'm gonna give him a solid B. Really just because I think Tony Pollard is like again a high. I don't even know. We'll get into the tier list rankings, but again, it's just kind of hard for me to say that Tony Pollard's anything. He's not like this elevated back, and the fact that I'm not really too confident Tyjae Spears or anyone else they have there just doesn't really seem too great. But overall, it's still a decent running back situation. So again, I'm not gonna like bash on it too much. What is that? 9, 18. What is that? 22 points. Is that what is that? 18 plus 6. Yeah, there we go. All right, wide receiver. The Titans wide receiver situation is not great. That's probably the best way to put it. Calvin Ridley as a number 1 receiver, you're going to live with him being that because he's a very solid player overall, but he's also very inconsistent. He barely got over 1,000 yards in 2023 after, again, missing 2022 with a gambling suspension. And then, 2021, he was like a personal time off thing. Anyway, though, he has had 1 season in his career where he looked like an early receiver. That was 2020. He was just flat out embarrassing guys. That's kind of how it was. Still hasn't gotten close. I guess kind of in 2023 he did. But he hasn't really gotten too close to that 2018 season there. But for Calvin Ridley, he is not an X receiver. He never will be. He needs to be put as a Z. Really didn't happen until the end of last year. And he had, again, his worst game of the season. It was against the Colts. He did not look like an NFL caliber player that game. It was probably one of the most frustrating things I've ever seen out of a player ever. Because he's a very talented player. There's no way around it. But, like, you could see it here. Yeah, Calvin Ridley, again, he's a number one receiver for sure. But, like, I don't know. It's just kind of frustrating to watch him play because, again, he's very inconsistent. Tyler Lockett is not a number 2. I'd argue not even a reliable number 3 at this point in his career. He's old. He's slow-ish. He can still track a deep ball as good as anybody. But, again, he's just not going to be very productive. And he's always been a guy that's relied a lot on his speed and his overall deceptiveness. And that's just kind of declining right now. And, again, signing him to be your number 2 receiver is just not going to work out too well. Traylon Burks is the worst football player I've ever seen. Yeah, that might be one of the worst trades ever. It is. Van Jefferson, he hasn't done anything since the 2021 season with the Rams. 2022, I thought, again, he was a guy somewhat decent in that situation, but even though he wasn't. Got cut in like 2023 sometime in that season. Then he went to the Falcons, did absolutely nothing. And last year with the Steelers, did show some things, but again, still wasn't a reliable guy. Shamari DK, I haven't heard about him yet. And then Ayomanar, who I think is probably the most promising guy. Again, out here who hasn't really shown much. But again, he was a 4th round pick maybe? Yeah, 4th round pick out of Stanford. I think he's a very reliable guy in terms of making catches. Yes, he's not going to break many tackles or be a big yak guy for them. But again, they don't really have that anyway. So I don't know what they're supposed to do with that. But they do need a guy who can work and just get the football out too. And I think Alec can definitely be that for them. After that, James Prochet has shown some things. He's really the only guy that I think is really even produced. Xavier Restrepo's interesting. He's a guy who, I mean, maybe can make this roster. I'm really rooting for him. But again, in terms of the NFL, he's physically not to the par of these other guys. But if I'm going to give this wide receiver grade, I'll probably give them a D+. Calvin Ridley's good, but he's really the only guy that I think is anywhere near what they need. You could argue it's a C-, but it's tough. I think the depth is just so horrendous. They just don't even have a number 2 guy, like not even close. So Calvin Ridley is like a lower end number 1, which I think is pretty fair at saying. And that's really all they have. Because Alec Ayomanar is pretty cool. Xavier Restrepo, I really hope, does something. But, like, you're really reaching for pins there. So I'm going to be pretty harsh here, giving them only 9 points a receiver. You could argue it's a C-, but that's just kind of stretching it. Because they have one good guy who isn't even an X, and they don't have an X. So, yeah, unless they figure that out, I don't think it's going to be good. But anyway, tight end for the Titans is actually a solid position. Chika Conklin was very underrated. He isn't going to be a guy who you're going to expect to put up, I don't know, 800 receiving yards in a season, which I kind of did expect maybe he could have done in 2022, but I think he's come to a reality that he'll be a productive guy in terms of a yak. He's actually not a terrible blocker, and also is, again, a reliable guy in terms of what you're going to get out of him in the receiving game. And for that reason, I think he's definitely a solid guy. He's nothing special, but like I said, solid receiver for them. Josh Wiley's a good blocker. He can make a couple guys miss. Gunnar Helm is probably the pseudo backup, to be honest with you guys, though, because he has a lot of good things going for him. Yes, is he the most flashy prospect in terms of, again, what you're going to really see in terms of production? Absolutely not. But, again, I think he's definitely one of the better blockers overall with this group. So, again, I actually like their depth at tight end, and overall probably give them a B. You could argue a B-, but I really think this is a group that could definitely produce for them this year. So, I'm going to be on the nicer end with that position, give them a B. So, that's going to be 6, 12, what is that, 16 points at tight end for the Titans. That's all I got for skill positions. Let's talk about the offensive line and see how this overall grade turns out on the offensive side of the ball. And now looking at the Titans' offensive line, this is a group that it's progressing. All right, there we go. 2021, they were one of the better run blocking units in the entire league. 2020 they were. 2021, they were not as good. Still not great pass blocking. They haven't been great pass blocking unit in who knows how long. 2022, though, they were not great. 2023, in this past year, they've probably been the worst offensive line in the league. And that starts with the fact they haven't had a competent left tackle ever since Taylor Lewan left. Dan Moore Jr. is not a competent NFL offensive left tackle. He actually didn't have his worst season with the Steelers last year, though. I think I'd probably say 2021 was. There we go. He's not that athletic, and just the fact that I'm being completely honest with you guys, I don't think he can consistently sustain blocks is really going to hurt him there. I cannot pronounce this guy's name, but he played with the Vikings, a decent backup. He's gotten some starting time. He's never really been that impressive to me, but over in terms of a backup, you could have definitely worse guys. Peter Skoronski, kind of a step back last year, not a complete step back, but after, again, still wasn't great as a rookie, but I think, again, was by far the best offensive lineman on this team. He didn't really look as good as I think I would have wanted him to see, just some inconsistencies. But I'm not going to act like, again, I watched every single one of his snaps. I watched most of it, though. And again, I just didn't see the same player. But he still wasn't bad, so I'm not going to, yeah, he was okay. Again, definitely going to try to see a third-year jump here. Jackson Slater, I almost said Peter Slater. He's a very interesting prospect, very athletic, has some very good techniques. But still a very raw guy, and he's a guy you're going to definitely need to see some sort of development from before you can really count him as a starter. Lloyd Cushenberry, probably the best center I won't say the best, one of the best centers in football in 2023 in a contract year. Got injured halfway through last year, and that was just kind of when the Titans, in the cavern, that Titans offensive line kind of came in. Because he did a lot with the running game. Again, they paid him big bucks. He's a really good player, but it's just, again, the injury kind of concerns me. Brandon James, he played for the Chargers. That's really all I know about him. Out to the fact that, again, he's a decent run blocker. But, again, this backup, you're going to just have to take it. Kevin Zeitler, huge signing for them. Again, without this, I really wouldn't think this offensive line is that good. But, again, he's been a very, very good player coming off, honestly, probably his best year. Maybe 2020, what was it, one with the Ravens? Something like that. But he was a very good blocker for Jared Goff the past couple of years. And, again, there was definitely a difference when he wasn't on the field. Part of that best offensive line in the NFL there. So, yeah, Kevin Zeitler is a phenomenal player despite the fact he's 37. He's 35. I was close. Blake Hance, mediocre backup. J.C. Latham had an interesting rookie season overall. I wouldn't say it was bad, but there were some games where, again, it was kind of like a Kel McQuano in a lot of ways, where he just completely whiffed on blocks. But overall for rookie year, despite, again, definitely having these moments, I think it was okay. Jalen Duncan kind of got thrown in the fire. Was it this year or was it last year? I completely forget. I think it was last year, because I don't remember him playing really that much at all last year. But 2023, if I'm not mistaken, he tore his ACL. He was absolutely horrible. It wasn't his fault. He shouldn't have been playing. But yeah, Jalen Duncan's definitely had a trying career so far. I can't pronounce this guy's name. He probably won't make this roster. Corey Levin's horrible. Sam Mustipher is also horrible. Chandler Brewer, fourth string. Yeah. Overall though, I'm actually pretty confident again outside of Dan Moore, this offensive line looks pretty decent. The depth isn't great, but again, there's definitely worse depth in the NFL. Peter Skoronski, I'm expecting to take a jump. J.C. Latham, I think, will definitely have a better season. And they have two very, very, very quality guys at center and right guard. So overall, despite this offensive line being one of the worst in the league last year, I'll probably give them a C+, which you could definitely convince me to give them a B- if I really thought about it. But, I'm a good left tackle. Your depth could be better with that later. So, again, I'm kind of like just a fine line. Again, there's depth. Again, there's an actual grade for that, too, but I'm not trying to get too deep into that. So, yeah. Because Peter Skoronski still hasn't been a guy that I've been super consistent on, and then again J.C. Latham, he wasn't great last year. So yeah, I'm gonna give him a C+. I think B- would be okay too, but I think I'll stick at a C+, which will land him at a 12. And then we add these up, and then look at these the standards there. So we got 25 plus 22 plus 9. That's a freaking big dud. You probably want to score double digits here if you want to end up with a nice grade. 16 plus 12, 84 points for the overall offensive grade, which will bring us to a D+, which I'm going to be honest, I think a C- might be warranted here. This is an offense that I don't feel is going to be good by any means. What are we at, 20? But at the same time, it's, I think D+ is fair. Yeah, it's at the high range there. But this is an offense that just doesn't have that much firepower. That's probably the best way to put it. The offensive line is still unproven in terms of the continuity. The quarterback position is, again, it's a freaking rookie. Running back and tight end should be decent production, though, and I think that does help them out a lot. But overall, it's still an offense that I don't expect to be too productive this season. With that said, though, that's all I got for the offense. Let's start with this defense in the front seven. And this is a Titans defense that overall wasn't as bad as you might have thought last season. It still wasn't good, obviously. Again, that's the reason they lost 14 games. They were also insanely undisciplined, and that was part of the reason that you saw some guys who you might think are decent players not be very decent. Let's start this, again, the interior of the defensive line. Again, we got the whole front seven to get through. But Sebastian Joseph Day, he is a decent defensive tackle of sorts. He hasn't been really that productive since 2022, in my opinion, where he was with the Chargers and had a very solid season. 2023 with the Niners, I don't even know what was going on here. It was very weird. But 2023, he really struggled against the run, which is kind of his calling card. Last season, I think he did a decent job in terms of being active. But he actually missed a lot of tackles, which is kind of weird. But he did shed blocks a lot better than what we've seen past years. So overall, I think it was definitely an upper year for him. Philip Bleedy, how do you pronounce his name? I don't even know. He's a guy that I'm gonna be honest, I think I watched clip of 6 snaps off of that Auburn. He gets off the line decent from what I saw, But outside that, I really just can't give you guys complete analysis on him. Devontae Sweat, overall for a rookie, I think did a decent job. He's not going to be a guy really see as being a productive pass rusher at all for a defensive tackle, but he still got some decent penetration. And there's yard created against for this defense as a run defense group. He did a decent job helping out that stat. Keandre Coburn, I think, is a guy who could be a solid, maybe you could throw him on at 3 tech if you need to, but he's still a bona fide no tackle at the end of the day. But he definitely has some athleticism that you might not get at Devontae Sweat, even though obviously Devontae Sweat is a much better player overall. Jeffrey Simmons, the superstar on this defense, really didn't have that great of a year, to be honest with you. Yeah, obviously you might say, what the hell are you talking about? Most underrated guy in the league. Again, I definitely understand that. But in terms of the efficiency and his pressure numbers, it just wasn't the same as we saw in 2022 and 2023, where he was arguably one of the most efficient interior defensive linemen. But again, against the run, it spoke volume when he was able to do last year. So it's one of the one of the better interior defensive linemen in the league. But he also, still wasn't getting the same production in terms of, that efficiency. And also, some of his moves weren't working as well, so I got to say that. But overall, despite somewhat of a down season in terms of his pass rush production, he's still, a fantastic player. Carlos Watkins, a very interesting guy, because, when you watch him with the Cowboys, he really wasn't too great. And just overall, kind of just like what's going to happen here? He definitely had a shot to start last year, just really didn't do much. And it's just not very explosive off the line either. You probably want a guy who's a little bit more dynamic there as a backup. But again, coming on a couple downs, but after that, not great. Cam Horsley's very unproven. James Lynch has never been that good. And then these other two guys I've never heard of. All right. Now we talk about these edge rushing group. Draymond Jones kind of got moved to that outside spot. As a run defender, he's a bit major plus here because he's very dynamic there. Again, in terms of, kind of a chess piece, because he's obviously an interior guy. Again, he was a freaking defensive tackle for the Broncos for a couple of years there. But off the edge, I think, again, the explosiveness is a little bit of an issue because you're just not going to see that same dynamic ability there. And still was very solid at Seahawks last year. He has been very consistent overall in his career. Not a true number one guy, though. I think that definitely hurts him. Oh, yeah, let's get into the defensive line. So, if I was going to grade this defensive line, I'd probably give them, I don't know, what are we going to say, a B? It's very solid. I just don't think Devontae Sweat or Sebastian Joseph there are anything more than maybe solid players. But again, Jeffrey Simmons is very, very good. So, I think B's solid grade there. What is that, 6, 12, 16 points? All right. Now we get into the how do we get into the pass rush? We'll talk about the linebackers last. But Draymond Jones, he is not a true number one edge rusher. Partly just because I don't think he's really just ever been that productive, and also again, he's just not going to provide you that burst or that speed that you might need out of a guy like that. But still, very solid guy. As a number 2, you'd be happy with. Again, it's just kind of like an unorthodox place for him. Jalen Harrell, he provides some value because he's definitely versatile in kind of a different way. But again, still hasn't really been a guy you can really, because I think he cracked 3 pressures last year. But I think he's definitely a guy who could develop into something of value, but he's not a guy you really want to see on the field too often. Lorenzo Carter, I don't know how he's still in the league. Titus Leo is a special teamer at best. Arden Key is interesting because he is the one guy in this defensive line, our edge rushing group that is really a true proven guy who can be like, yeah, that gives me productive. Past season with the Titans, again, he had Harold Landry again in 2023, being again a little bit better. But last year again, started almost every game. I think it was one game he didn't start. It was kind of weird. But for Arden Key, again, he's kind of bounced around the league a little bit. Again, he's got decent speed moves, but he's never a guy, again, you're really expected to be anything more than number 2 guys. So, again, they basically have 2 guys here that I'm just not too confident in. Olafemi Aldagio is very interesting to watch. Very good first step. I like his second step as well, but the biggest thing with him is that spin move stick? We really don't know yet. So, again, very interesting prospect, though, there. Ali Gaye, I cannot pronounce his name, and Desmond Evans are both guys who might make this roster and might not. So, looking at this pass rush as a whole, they have 2 guys off the edge that I think can generate some pressure, but neither of them are going to really be either that efficient. I mean, Draymond Jones is pretty efficient, but neither of them are even close to number 1 guys. And then the depth is just not great either. So I'm going to be honest, I'll probably give them a C in terms of their pass. And I'll give them a C+, because Harold Landry will produce. I think that will be somewhat advantageous for this group overall. So I think this pass rush will be somewhat productive this year, because I think the defensive line will definitely do a lot of work there. But you look at the pass rush overall off the edge, it's just not going to be too dynamic. But again, there's worse pass rushes in the league, but again, it's just not very good. I just think, again, the interior pressure will carry a little bit, and again, we'll see how it actually plays out in the season, but I think it'll actually be okay there. So 24 points for the pass rush there, if they think that's right. That's the math. All right, now getting these linebackers again with them running a 3-4, they will again having 2 starting linebackers here. Cody Barton is a solid starting guy. Again, they signed him. Again, he played with the Broncos last year. Very, very dynamic. Had a solid season overall. I wouldn't say career year, but pretty close to that. Otis Reese is a guy I'm not a fan of at all, just because I don't think he hasn't really played at all yet. Yeah. Decent in coverage though, I'll say that. He has some definitely good zone disciplines there. Still isn't a very proven tackler though, so we'll see how that turns out. So I'm not like too fond of him there. Cedric Gray had a rough rookie year. James Williams has never really proven himself at all. And then you got a couple rookies here and some other, dudes here. So overall, this linebacker group is definitely lacking. I think they have one starter though, which I think is definitely something there. So also, I'll give them a C at linebacker just because I don't really think there's not much else there for them outside of Cody Barnes. So what is that? 15 points. That's all I got for the front seven. Let's get into the secondary and the overall defensive grade. All right, looking at the Titans' secondary again. If it was 2024, I'd say this looks a lot different, but I don't really know. All right. L'Jarius Sneed was absolutely god-awful last year in most of the 4 games he played. There's no way around it. He was just awful. They signed him to that contract. It was very bizarre with what happened there. But yeah, L'Jarius Sneed was just absolutely putrid last year. He was getting burned left and right. He was arguably I'd say probably top 10 corner going into last year. But again, he was absolutely putrid. Again, that just didn't help him. So I think he'll definitely be better than he was last year. But I don't know. Maybe he pulls up, what is his name? How do I forget it? J.C. Jackson. So yeah. Darrell Baker, I always get confused with him. He's not. Yeah, he was. This is a very interesting guy because he can flat out tackle guys. He's very good against the run for a corner. But I've never thought of him as a guy I'm like, yeah, he's gonna be able to cover in man, like stick in the league in that. He just has never really been able to show that. So that's my thought on him. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. Very interesting rookie season. He had some really good reps against some really good receivers. Like again, Jets Week 2, that was probably one of his better games. But outside of, again, those solid flashes there, in zone coverage, he just really never looked too comfortable. And he did give up some massive plays at points as well. Again, okay tackler, but overall, again, I wouldn't say a lot to be desired, but definitely some more stuff he could have done this past season. But still, phenomenal rookie year for what you expected of him. Gabe Judy Lally. This is a name, bro. That's all I'll say. UDFA out of Tennessee. This guy is actually pretty interesting. So, I think it was against Alabama a couple years ago. He made an amazing read on the ball. I've never seen a guy do this. So basically, he dropped back, like 2-step back pedal, immediately got burned, but cut it on this underneath there because he knew Jalen Milrow was going to throw it, and he just completely broke up the play. Insane instincts there. Did not give a crap about his guy. I don't know. It was like he knew what was happening before the play happened. Anyway, that's all I got on him. Ryder McCreary is a very solid slot corner just because of his physicality. He is not a guy you're going to expect to really lock up really anybody in coverage, to be honest with you. He got targeted a crap ton the past few in 2022, 2023. Not as much last season because, like I said, he was very good. Again, those 2 seasons overall. I still don't think he's anything more than a pretty solid slot, though. So I'm not going to be too gung-ho on him. But again, he's definitely a guy you want as a slot. Marcus Harris, I don't really care about these other guys. I don't even know. So the fact that this cornerback room is just not really proven and just not that deep definitely hurts them. But again, as bad as L'Jarius Sneed was, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is definitely a guy you can see as number 2. Roger McCreary is a very solid slot. And again, the depth just isn't very good, so I guess you could talk about that too. Also, I'll give them a C+ a corner because, again, they got a solid slot. Again, L'Jarius Sneed, there's no way he's bad as he was last year. Again, if he was good, you could probably convince me to a B-. But again, the depth there is definitely going to be interesting to talk about later. Safety. For the sake of, context, Amani Hooker was probably the only guy in this secondary that I think consistently was playing 100%. He has been a starter here since 2019-ish. He started some games 2019. I'd say since 2020. And he kind of just stuck it out last year. The picks definitely helped him out a lot. But again, he was definitely overplaying as well. So again, it was kind of up against him. But yeah, Amani Hooker's a very solid player. In coverage, he's gonna get beat. He's a freaking safety. Their ratings fluctuate differently every season. Hale Block's rating was a 30 last year against. That's just not realistic. So yeah, Amani Hooker's a very solid player. Kevin Winston Jr. is one of my favorite prospects in this entire draft. Again, in their draft class, I think he'll definitely be an interesting guy watching in the season. Mike Brown is a solid special teamer. I think he can definitely get some snaps though because he is pretty dynamic in terms of his instincts. Xavier Woods is a very solid safety. He's kind of bounced around the league a little bit. Didn't have his best year in Carolina last year though. He wasn't bad. It was just kind of the coverage wasn't really what we saw in 2023 or even 2022. Again, the tackling numbers were off the charts because, you saw how bad that Panthers run defense was last year. But overall, I think Xavier Woods would have wanted a little bit more of a statistically inclined season. So, looking at this safety room for the Titans, it's very, very solid for sure. I'll probably give them a B. The depth, again, depth could be better, but I actually really like what they got going on here. So 9-18, what is that? 24 points. And all right, looking at his overall defensive grade, what is that? 15, what is that? We're going to say 31 plus 24 plus 12 plus 24. 91 points for this defense. That's going to put them at, where are we at? 91. Are we on defense? Yeah. Oh, shoot. We went to the wrong thing for that. So, no, they're still a D+. All right, for this defense, what is that, 91? A C? No, a D, C minus. You know, that is fair. This defense isn't terrible. Again, it's just not that great. I'm going to say that a lot with the Titans here. But, yeah, it's just not that great. That's too big. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's talk about some other things now. And the Titans special teams unit, their kicker is Joey Sly. That's never a bad thing. It's never a good thing either. Last year with the Patriots, and I don't even know. Yeah, he started all their games. He was good, I guess. There's nothing else to talk about with that. 2021 with the Commanders, he was freaking awesome, though. I'll say that. He has a huge leg. Again, he's had his struggles, though. I mean, there's a reason he, no, I don't even know. He isn't even bad. Like, I'm very confused here. Whatever, he's their kicker. Yeah, that's what's going on. Big leg. Yeah, that's all I got to talk about him. He's a solid kicker. Johnny Egger's always been a good punter. Maybe not as late. Julius Chestnut, again, solid kick returner. And I guess. And then Shamari DK, I could care less about his punt returner. Morgan Cox, very good long snapper. And this other team's unit is never really known to be terrible, I guess. So I don't know. I'll give them a C+. Let's come out to, what is that, 5 points? Yeah. All right. Depth for the Titans. Let's go through each position and think about their depth. All right, quarterback depth is probably a B because, I mean, there's worse backup quarterbacks. Running back depth, I'll give a C because, again, it's just not very good. Wide receiver depth, a D. So right now we're probably seeing it, honestly, a C. Again, averaging that out. Tight end depth, I like a lot, so I'll say B+. It's probably going to be a C+ at that point. C+, O-line depth could be better, but it's still not terrible. C-. I'm going to say we're at a C so far. Defensively, depth on the defensive line is lacking. I'll probably say a C-, so we're probably still sitting at a C-. Edge rushing depth, oof, not great. That's what I'll say about that. It's just not very good. I mean, Olufemi Oladajo isn't terrible. I'll probably say they got a C-, so we're still sitting C-. Linebacker depth, probably a D+. No, I'll give it a D. So we're probably a D+ now for the depth. Cornerback depth is awful. I'd probably give that a D. Yeah, I'd probably give it a D. Darrell Baker Jr. isn't the worst, but outside of that, it's just a complete freaking hole. So we're saying a D+ so far. Again, if I had to guess, safety depth is actually not terrible. I'll give that a B+. So I'd say so far we're at a C-. And again, that's about it. So I'll say they get a C- for their depth. It's not good, but again, there's some positions that have some depth. So again, I guess that's decent. Yeah, I gotta give them a D+. The Titans they're just not a very deep team. So 12 points. Identity. All right, the 2025 Tennessee Titans, do they have a depth? I mean, this is basically just ranking their coach, to be honest with you guys at this point. But for the Tennessee Titans, their depth is, not their depth, their identity. So, offensively, what are we looking at? Tony Pollard's going to get a lot of carries. Is that great? No. What are they going to do at receiver? They're going to get the ball to Calvin Ridley. But overall, how is that going to really work out, and how is that the inconsistencies of Cam Ward, which are inevitable, going to affect this overall rhythm of this offense? It's going to be pretty decent. So, offensively, do I like the fact that Cam Ward is going to be able to make some plays again or kind of help them out? I think they'll have a little bit better of an identity than they had last year, so I'll probably say they get a C- for their offense. Defensively, though, again, if someone gets injured, they're kind of cooked, but I do like where they're going with this, so I'll probably say the identity 2025 Titans is a C. Again, if Brian Callahan wants to F that up, he can do that, but I think this team will be somewhat competitive this year in terms of, again, their overall consistency and what they think they are. So that's going to be 25 points. And now, let's get this overall roster grade. And after calculating the Titans having 217 total points, holy crap, that's a lot of points, for their total there. We look at the range in terms of the overall. Again, this is just a guideline. That would land them at a C-, and I'm going to say they're going to get a D. We'll say they get a C-, because looking at this roster overall, it isn't horrible. But despite having, again, 4 pretty solid positions, there's some positions that are a lot to be desired. But at the same time, I don't think it's a team that has any major holes. Again, wide receiver is definitely one where you're like, ugh. But if we're looking at this position to position, there's at least one confident player at it, and I think that keeps them in the C range. Again, if we said, I don't know, freaking cornerback, Jarvis, I don't even know. It's kind of tough because Not cornerback. Let's say Arden Key and Draymond Jones weren't on this defensive line. They had two other guys. This defensive, screw it. Jeffrey Simmons was not on this defensive line. It would probably be a C, and that would bring us into the D tier because they don't have a really good player. So, again, this isn't a good team, or roster overall, but it isn't awful. Again, there's definitely, again, I'd be okay if you gave him a D+, but I think the points do kind of support this. There's confident player position. I think that is warranted at least a C-. Good luck to Cam Ward and the Aura Farm. That's all I got for the 2025 Titans roster. And unless things change, yeah, we'll talk about them in, September? That's all I got for you guys now.
15. Deep ball from Jefferson. Got him in stride. On the way is Burks. It's a touchdown, Arkansas. 85 yards. Well, Miles Jones, after the motion, is going to have